my name is Barbara Nissman, and I am talking to you from my music studio in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. Now, normally I might be talking to you from the stage, but sadly these are not normal times, and we're hoping we'll get back to the stage very soon. But in the meantime, I thought it would be fun to share with you exactly what I do in my studio. Now, I spend a lot of my waking hours here, living with my composer friends, trying to get closer to their spirit and their character and their intentions when they were writing this marvelous music that I have the chance to perform. And so I thought it would be nice to take you behind the notes and show you what I go through when I'm preparing a piece for performance. And I thought it would be nice to start with everybody's favorite sonata, everybody's favorite Beethoven sonata, the Moonlight Sonata. And I think a lot of you have also sat down at the piano. I'll bet you've tried to play that opening page. And I don't know if you got to the second movement or if you managed to get to the third movement, because that's the most technically challenging. But today I'd like to walk you through the entire sonata because in addition to that wonderful first movement, the entire sonata, the other two movements are really magnificent, and the whole work truly holds together. It's one of Beethoven's very special sonatas. And I have to confess to you that it was not Beethoven's favorite sonata. And he had good reason for that, because he was very afraid, because of its popularity, that it would dwarf his other 31 sonatas. He wrote a total of 32 sonatas, and they're all glorious. But this Moonlight was the most popular with the public. And of course, that nickname did not exist in Beethoven's time. It came after. It was the invention of a critic by the name of Rellstab, who, upon listening to this, said, "Oh, it reminds me of Moonlight over Lake Lucerne." And of course, nicknames have a way of sticking. And publishers grabbed that nickname and sold even more copies of Beethoven's sonata. But I can understand the popularity, because that first movement really gets to your heart. I always call it Beethoven's hymn from heaven. It's a very special atmosphere he creates, and special emotions that he touches. So let's go and look at that piece and see what the problems are. Now, first of all, he gives us a tempo marking of Adagio sostenuto. Now that's a very slow tempo, but I have to decide how slow it should be. So, I mean, we could go extreme and go. I find that very slow, and I find that would be hard to hold together for the entire piece, and it would make that first movement just very long. And then some pianists do it much faster. I find that a bit too fast for my heartbeat. So I settle on a tempo somewhere in between those two, because I want to create that wonderful atmosphere, and we have to do that immediately. That works for me better. Beethoven also indicates on the score to be played without dampers. Now, what that means is he wasn't using the modern Steinway, and on his piano he wanted the dampers not to dampen the strings. In other words, he wanted the sound to reverberate. And if we translate that to our modern piano, in other words, he wanted us to use pedals. Now, listen to the way it would sound if we didn't use pedal. Very dry, and you'd have trouble connecting, making those notes sound like they're connected. Pedal provides the glue and also creates the color and the atmosphere. So it's a whole different sound world when you use pedal. So I will be using my left pedal because it starts very softly, as well as my right pedal, and try and shift the pedal with each harmony, but so you don't hear it. So I'll use kind of a pedal vibrato technique. And so listen to what it sounds like with pedal. So different than without. So much better, right? Yes, and that's the feeling I want. And then Beethoven, of course, brings in this wonderful melody. So what you have this bass that's providing the bottom, the foundation, and it's a deep bass, and that gets right to your heart chakra. Then you have this triplet accompaniment that keeps going throughout the entire piece. We call that an ostinato. And then on top of that, you have this melody that comes in. So the pianist has to maintain those three separate voices. So let's start where the melody comes in. I always think that's Beethoven's pain there, that dissonance. And then it's repeated again, and you always repeated it a little differently. And then Beethoven gives us a contrasting section, although he keeps that triplet figure going. And in the contrasting section, we hold that G sharp. It keeps getting repeated. The bass doesn't move anywhere. And there's a dialogue that goes on. There's the answer. Another question. Beethoven ends the piece is, after this third section, he then gives that melody to the left hand, and that provides this kind of dark ending. So here's... what's amazing about this movement, besides the emotional content, is that when you think of all the elements, it's so simple. I mean, even that melody, that's all it is. Look what he does with it. In Beethoven's hands, he makes the simple so profound. And that is his genius. I don't think anybody else could have written a movement like this. So there we are at the end. And over the music he writes attacca subito. So in other words, he doesn't want any coughing in between. He wants you to go directly to the second movement. And you're going to hear the contrast. All of a sudden, you're smiling again. So he puts the scherzo and trio in between the adagio and the presto agitato, which I call the meat and potatoes movement, because that's a real substantial movement. So this scherzo functions more as a diversion. And after that heavy emotional opening, it's very welcome. You really do want to smile. So after the first section, which is a charming dialogue, Beethoven gives us a trio section. That's the form ABA trio. And I always imagine him dancing a jig at a local party or something. Having fun. And it goes on, and then it returns to the opening. The lovely dialogue. And so on, until we get to the presto agitato, and it's a totally different character. And this is a driven, passionate movement. And this is the way Beethoven opens it. Right? And contrast is really the essential ingredient of these sonatas. I mean, contrast is so important. Contrast in mood, contrast in color, in key, everything. So let me walk you through sonata form, because this is a sonata movement. And I have to tell you, this is the way I work. When I am pulling out a new piece of music, I can't do the details first. I need to get the larger picture. I need to know how the composer puts the work together. And I need to know the structure, where he pours his material. And only after that, then can I deal with the details, the dynamics, the dramatic climaxes, the articulation. And because you need to see the bigger picture. So in the sonata form, the first section, it's also in 3 sections, but the first section is called the exposition. And Beethoven will give us a contrasting second theme. So it's contrasting not only in character, but more importantly, it's contrasting in key. So instead of C sharp minor, we get G sharp minor. And it's a bit more lyrical, but it still has this wonderful motoric energy. Because Beethoven now writes some syncopations, that means off the beat, and I think, my goodness, jazz musicians owe a lot to Beethoven because it's very jazzy. Okay, but what's interesting is Beethoven gives you a second theme in 2 parts. So here's the second part. The dialogue. Close this section, the first section. He'll give you a closing section. puts in a repeat sign. And I love repeats because it gives me a second chance to get closer to what the composer intended. And I think it's wonderful for the listener to hear this again because you hear even more the second time. So I will repeat that section and then we go on to the middle section, which is called the development. This is the conflict. This is where everybody's fighting with everybody else. The first theme's fighting with the second theme. And Beethoven brings in these two themes again, but he goes through a lot more keys. And let me give you an idea of what it is. Here's the second theme. On the left hand has G major now, another key. Now he's winding down. Okay, and now we are coming to the return. And you're going to hear the first theme again, and you're going to hear the second theme again. And the fancy name for the return is the recapitulation. So we start with the opening theme. And then he gives us, the only difference is, he will give us the second theme again. Same contrasting character. The only difference is now it will be in the original key. The same key as the opening theme of C sharp minor. And I think logically, it's because Beethoven has to finally get to the end of the piece, so he has to give you the second theme in the tone key. There's wonderful syncopations there. And he'll give us two parts to it. And then Beethoven will do something that stretches this last movement. Most composers add a coda after the recapitulation. So you have the exposition, the development, and the return, the recapitulation. And then a composer will tack on an ending. That's what it is. It's a summary. He summarizes what's going on. And Beethoven does something actually quite interesting. He inserts a mini cadenza. It's as if he's writing a mini concerto. So he'll, in the coda, this is in the coda, he'll give you that first theme, then he'll give you the second theme, then he'll give you arpeggios, then he'll give you scales, and then finally he'll come back to the real closing section. So let me see if I can find the place and play it for you. To get back to the real closing section. And I think what it's so easy to forget is that Beethoven was a terrific pianist. He was a wonderful virtuoso. In fact, he played all these piano sonatas And so it's not surprising that he inserted all this bravura flourish in the coda. And he had a brashness and he had a boldness to his playing that is wonderful to try and capture. And I have to say something about Beethoven too, and confess to you what the challenge is for the pianist. Beethoven was not a composer who wrote for the piano. I would say he wrote beyond the instrument, whereas my friend Liszt wrote for the piano. Prokofiev wrote for the piano. But it's as if Beethoven challenges the pianist to try and make sense of what he puts on the paper, because that's what he's hearing in his head. And there's this wonderful story I must share with you about a violinist. And I think it was probably a violinist who picked up Beethoven's violin concerto. And he then ran to the maestro and he says, "Maestro, this is unplayable." And Beethoven just nodded and said, "Do you really think I think of your silly little instrument when I am writing my music?" And I think he feels the same way about the piano. So this is really the challenge for the pianist. We need to really, in a way, try and get into his head. Again, it's like trying to understand the intentions of the composer as they were composing these pieces. That would be the ideal, to be able to play just as they conceived it. So that's why we keep trying and keep chipping away and keep practicing. So let me just perform this piece. I've just taken it out, so I'll give you a rough idea of the complete Moonlight Sonata, and hopefully you can follow along with some of the suggestions I've made. And of course, the next time you listen to this work, it will be even more familiar and you'll be able to hear even more, make more discoveries. But this is a wonderful sonata, and I am so happy to share this with you. now you'll understand why I spend so many of my waking hours in the studio trying to get a little closer to Beethoven or to all my composer friends. And hopefully you'll join me next time when we talk about another one of my composer friends, and I can share with you what goes on behind the notes. And in the meantime, stay safe and well, and I look forward to seeing you again. This was lots of fun for me, and I hope it was lots of fun for you too. Thank you.